There is no evidence that anything routinely seen by psychiatrists is a disease. It's all made up. And it is so made up that there isn't a leading psychiatrist in this country that would debate me face to face on the issue, because they have nothing. All they have is their power, their authority, and drug company money, and ads in magazines and newspapers. There is no evidence that depression is biochemical. ADD isn't even a disease. It's just a bunch of behaviors. Being depressed is being hopeless and despairing. It's not a disease. It's a spirit thing. There's really no evidence. Believe it or not, even so-called schizophrenia, there's no evidence. I'll never forget when I sat down with the head of NIMH, the person who was no longer at NIMH, who had sponsored the schizophrenia studies that are always being bandied about to show that people are genetically defective. And I said, what did these studies show? He said, oh, they showed it was environmental. Wait a minute. The studies showed, the genetic studies showed that there's an environmental factor in schizophrenia? He said, yes. He said, but they didn't show any genetic factor. He said, read the studies. Well, I read the studies. Yeah, the authors lied. They lied about their own data. They actually lied in their conclusions about what was even in the data. That's how ideologically committed these people are to the untruth. So there really just isn't data. So then I go into intuition and my knowledge of people, and when are we depressed and when are we anxious, and it all seems quite understandable to me. So I don't feel the need for a made-up thing, a myth of biochemistry. Now, even if we do have some subtle biochemical derangement, like a aberrant LSD molecule that sometimes makes us weird, the last thing we need are psychiatric drugs to make us weirder. Because there's not a reason in the world to believe that the shot in the dark of a psychiatric drug is going to correct some imbalance we haven't even identified. It's just all nonsense. And it is just repeated again and again and again. I go into this stuff in great detail in my books. I go through the studies and everything. If you're interested in the schizophrenia type issues, and that's toxic psychiatry. It's hard to believe, because I know I'm saying things that, my God, that means that they've just made up all this stuff. And they have. But they've been doing it for 200 years. You go back to 1930 in Germany, as Nazi Germany is unfolding, and there was so much agreement already that all mental illness was genetic and biochemical that the first laws Hitler passed were the involuntary sterilization laws of all people who had any kind of mental problem at all, because they were convinced that they had the studies. Now, we don't believe any of those studies anymore. We know some were faked. We know most of them were worthless. But we forget all that, and we start all over again and prove it again with more fake studies. It's amazing to look at the history of this thing. It just goes on and on. Hitler gave the Iron Cross to the greatest genetic researcher in the field of schizophrenia, Ernst Rudin. He had Carnegie grants, Rockefeller grants. And it was all BS. Nobody even reads this stuff anymore. It's just this constant bombardment. But the difference now is the drug companies, because never before has psychiatry had unlimited funds. Now they have unlimited funds. Yeah.
Okay, I have a comment, really. It's not a question. But it seems to me, and it feels very much so to me, that the beauty of child development is in the experience. It's in the growth and developmental process of being allowed to move and to be co-creative.
Are you leaving? Or just stretching? Let me just get in touch and...
Well, I wanted to get a couple books signed too, so I'm waiting.
Okay, I'm going to finish up in a minute or two. I'm exhausting everybody. I'm exhausting myself.
Yeah. Okay, so it seems to me that one of the basic foundations to work with is a foundation of emotional literacy, and coming into a context or a space of allowing yourself to resonate and be comfortable with what you feel, and understand that no feeling is wrong or bad or horrible, that each feeling leads to a discovery, a balanced process to build a foundation of personal identity. So that sounds to me like part of what you're saying in the education of drugging of the children. But to me that seems so phenomenal, and in the first place, about that we would as a society even consider doing that, because we are very physically oriented, emotionally responsive beings, just naturally. So that's my comment.
Well, what you said is very, very important. You said it fast because you didn't want to take up a lot of time.
Definitely.
But it was very, very important. I mean, what she is saying is that we base it, well, the way I would put it, just in my own words, is that life is about knowing our feelings. These feelings that get labeled depression or anxiety, whatever, they're us. They're our signals. There are statements of our bodies and our hearts about what's happening in our lives. And what we need to do is not suppress them with drugs for ourselves as adults, if we're going to take Prozac or something. What we need is to really respect those feelings and make them grow. When somebody, and I'm going to end on this, if somebody comes into me and is horribly depressed and wants to kill themselves, I practically cheer. I don't say, oh boy, we're going to put you in a mental hospital. I say, you have all that feeling about life. Can you imagine what's going to be like when you take that dark self-hate and turn it around an energy that embraces life? So I'm not worried about you. This is going to be fine. So I worry about people who don't have feelings. Not you, George. You got feelings. Let's talk about them. But I'm sick. These are mentally ill feelings. No. These are sad feelings, hurt feelings, angry feelings. They're feelings. We can handle feelings. We can talk about feelings. We can share feelings. Now, I'm not the kind of this exuberant sort of, seminar leader. I'm doing this in a much quieter way. But that's basically what I'm doing. I'm saying, come on, we can have all these feelings. I'm not scared of your feelings. Want to kill yourself? Everybody who's ever been worth anything has wanted to kill themselves. You can't get through a decent adolescence without wanting to murder yourself. And probably somebody else. Yes, get it out. But I'm 75 and I'm still feeling that way. Well, I guess then you're still adolescent. Let's get to work on it. Let's get into it. Let's find out who you are and what you want to do with your life. The feelings are not to be suppressed. They are to be not acted on, necessarily, unless they're loving and rational, but they're not to be suppressed. Nor are our children and all their feelings. Thank you for your patience.